Hi guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Thank you for joining me on this video today, which is going to be a title called The Positive Impact and Outcomes of the Nun Study, N-U-N, Nun Study, Aging with Grace. I'm joined here by my beautiful wife and handler and colleague, Lynn. So hi, Lynn.
Hello.
There she goes again. One word, Lynn. Okay, the Nun Study. What is this all about? And it seems to be not so widely known about at the moment. But the Nun Study, Aging with Grace, started in 1986. A research project started by a guy called Dr. David Snowden. And it is a continued longitudinal study. So it's ongoing, and it's been going for all those years since 1986. The initial book published by David Snowden was called The Nun Study, Aging with Grace. And I would recommend every one of my followers and subscribers to my YouTube channel to get that book and read it. It's not complicated, it's not difficult, it's written really well, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and I guarantee once you pick it up and start reading it, you won't put it down until you've finished it. And then you'll want to tell everybody about it. Because it demonstrated some really useful things that we now know about Alzheimer's disease. And I'm particularly focusing on Alzheimer's disease here. So what happened? What was it all about? How did it begin? So David Snowden was an epidemiologist, and he wanted to study how some people age gracefully and how other people age not so gracefully. He wanted to work out why that was. It had nothing to do with dementia or Alzheimer's disease at that time. So his mother had a good relationship and a working relationship with the Sisters of Notre Dame in Milwaukee. I think I pronounced that correctly, Milwaukee. And the Sisters of Notre Dame have two orders. There's one order of nuns who go out and get an education and become teachers, professors, doctors, nurses, and that kind of stuff. And then there's the other order who stay home, do the cooking, the cleaning, and all that kind of stuff. So he thought this would be brilliant. So he went and asked Mother Superior, I want to do this. Would your sisters be interested in being part of this project? So she said, well, let's ask them. And they said, yeah, we're up for that. That's great. So just to shorten this story a little bit, eventually it turned out to be a study about Alzheimer's disease. And when you read the book, you'll see how that happened, how that transition occurred. One of the things that David did was discovered a pile of papers. And when he looked at these papers, they were one-page stories from novice nuns in the 40s, where Mother Superior had asked them, I want you to write a little bit about why you want to be a nun and about your life to date. And they're only 14, 15, these novice nuns. So he went through these things, and what he learned, what the team learned, was that the nuns that had written really good language and used good prose and good nouns and all that kind of stuff, good structured sentences, he put them on one side, and on the opposite side was the ones who hadn't used such good language that was difficult to kind of read. This became important because one of the things that the study uncovered is that education is a really good protector against developing a dementia type illness. And again, we're focusing here on Alzheimer's disease. Education. And this doesn't mean you have to go and get degrees, diplomas, left, right, and centre. But what it does mean is that if you continue educating yourself, and as I'm always saying to people, and as part of Rule of 7, learn something new each day, challenge your brain, challenge yourself. So education, it was discovered that people who did have degrees and people who did go on to to become doctors and nurses and those kind of people have a lowered risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, which is fantastic because it puts us in this position of being able to take control of preventing or at least reducing our risks. Okay, so that was one of the things that the project uncovered. Now, as we go along, the amount of nuns that joined the research grew. And so the research grew. And it turned into this research into Alzheimer's disease. So every day, the nuns went through a battery of tests, their physical ability, their cognitive ability, and all that kind of stuff. Every day they went through these batteries of tests. And many of them started to show how their lifestyle reduced their risk of developing Alzheimer's. Now, when you study a group of nuns like this, you remove a whole bunch of variables. They all live together. Their lifestyle is the same. Their diet and nutrition is the same. Everything about their life is consistent. And it's consistent right throughout the whole group of nuns. And one of the interesting things about nuns is that breast cancer is pretty common. And this is because they don't have children and they don't breastfeed, and we know there's a correlation between that. But we also know that cervical cancer is virtually non-existent. And again, we know the correlation between cervical cancer and sex. So we know that that's why there isn't much cervical cancer in that group of people. And there's a whole bunch of other variables removed. So it's a really good group of people to study. He eventually met I don't know what his title was, but he would do postmortems. Okay, so he did postmortems for organisations and services and the courts and all that kind of stuff. And he became friends with him. And he said to him, or the postmortem guy said to him, if you could get the nuns to donate their brains, after they've died, of course, we would have a powerful, powerful study. Well, nuns come into this world whole, and their belief system is that they go home whole. However, David decided he's going to get all these people together because he's got a good relationship with them, all these nuns, and some of them are 70, 80, 90, 100 plus years old. He's got a really good relationship with them. So he took a risk and asked them, would you be willing to do this? And many of them said, yeah, we are willing to do this. Only a few said no and withdrew from the research. So that was fantastic. That was a great achievement. So what was happening at postmortem was the guy was doing postmortems blind. He did not know whether this person had a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or didn't. So he was saying to David, well, Sister Gertrude had Alzheimer's disease. And David said, no, she didn't. And he said, yes, she did. Look, here it is. Here's evidence of the neuritic plaques, the tangles, the amyloid that causes Alzheimer's disease. There it is in the brain. So they had to re-examine this and think, well, she never demonstrated, she never presented, she never had the symptoms. So they looked into this more deeply and discovered that the nuns who did develop Alzheimer's disease and had the symptoms had also had a stroke or a series of mini strokes, transient ischemic attacks, TIAs. So they found that really interesting because if you hold the brain in your hand with the naked eye, you can see the damage caused to the brain from Sorry if you couldn't see that. If you hold the brain in your hand, you can see the damage caused by the stroke. Whereas with the amyloid and the plaques and tangles, you have to look under a microscope. You can't see that with the naked eye. But they learned that this is what seemed to have happened. They had the changes in the brain, but not the symptoms until the stroke came along. So that was a really interesting piece of research that tells us now that 1 in 10 people have mixed dementia. So they may have Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, which is caused by the strokes, or they may have other, couple, 3 dementias. So we know that now. And this is one of the things that makes it difficult to diagnose dementia still today. With all the new diagnostic tools we have, MRI, blood tests, spinal tap, all these tests that we've got, battery of tests and cognitive tests, it's still difficult to diagnose. So that was an excellent piece of research that came out of that. It was fantastic. The third thing I want to talk about with the nuns is that they all eat together. They all come together at night time and have this major social interaction and engagement. And this, again, has shown to be a positive protector against developing Alzheimer's disease. Interaction, engagement, conversation. And I tell people every day in clinic that you must continue social engagement. You must interact, you must have interests, you must sit on committees, sit on this, do this, volunteer here. Keep engaging on a social basis. And then the fourth thing that I'm going to mention briefly here is blood tests. Blood tests on these nuns. So we have nuns who were dependent on other nuns as they aged. And then we had nuns who were independent as they aged. So David's like, well, what's going on here? What is the deal here? And through blood tests, they were managed to establish that the nuns who had a higher level of independence had higher levels of a chemical called lycopene. And I know that, back then people didn't know what that was, but today most people know what lycopene is. And lycopene is something you get from food, and you get it from grapefruit, you get it from watermelon, and you get it from cooked tomatoes. Not raw tomatoes, cooked. Cooked tomatoes are one of the only foods that are better cooked than eating raw because of the lycopene, because it stimulates the lycopene. So he discovered that they had high amounts of lycopene, and the more dependent nuns, they had low levels of lycopene. So there's some correlation there. And this is why we talk about the importance of diet and nutrition. Diet and nutrition is absolutely crucial. So getting the lycopene from those foodstuffs is important. I know some people can't eat grapefruit, especially if you can't eat citrus fruits. If you've got arthritis and things and gastric reflux, you need to stay away from those things. So just think about what you're eating. But being able to eat those kind of things is really good for you, and it boosts your lycopene. You can get a supplement now for lycopene, but like everything else, it's always better from the food source. Okay, so that is a brief overview of the Nun Study, Aging with Grace. You can research it, you can Google it, you can find out information about it. Dr. Snowdon, who became Professor Snowdon, retired, and it's now being led by some other people. And I believe there are currently, I think, 4 sisters from the original research in '86 who are still alive and who are still involved in it. So check it out, look at it. You're going to learn some stuff, and it's going to be useful just to give you an overview of how we got to where we got to with today's current treatment and therapies. So Thank you for listening. Remember, visit my website, drdanielnightingale.com. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channels. Share, share, share. It's all about sharing education. The more we can educate people, the more knowledge they can gain and learn, the better it is for all of us. So thank you, guys. And just say this with me: dump the soda. Catch you later.